Welcome to NFL World, where NFL starts and ends. I'm your host, Jacob. And to begin, we'll talk Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook has gotten a couple contract offers via the Miami Dolphins, the New York Jets could be involved in this, as well as the New England Patriots have shown some interest. Now, according to what I've read, Dalvin Cook went and got a contract offer from the Miami Dolphins worth $7 million. And he said no. The highest paid running back right now in the free agency period was Miles Sanders, former Philadelphia Eagle, who joined the Carolina Panthers for about $6 million. That's the highest guy because the running back value is not that great at this point. Maybe in a couple years, we're talking something different. But he wants, and I would assume Dalvin Cook wants a commitment, 2 years, $10 million would be what he's looking for to try and match the franchise tag that Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, and Tony Pollard got, which was about a little over $10 million. That's exactly what I believe Dalvin Cook is looking for. Will he get it? The answer is probably a no, which is unfortunate. But people don't value the running back position right now because they're saying, hey, look, we can draft a guy, have him as a heavy lifter for 4 years. Maybe we franchise tag him, but then gone. And start that whole process over again. Now, it stinks if you have a good running back that not that you drafted, but that you brought in as a free agent because you don't know how much is left in his tank, but you got to figure it out. And a lot of teams are just going to go and draft running backs now. The Seahawks drafted 2 running backs. Teams are doing that now more than ever. So will Dalvin Cook get it? I don't know. He was apparently trying to get the Jets to jump their offer a little higher than $7 million, and that's why he's trying to play them against each other. The Patriots, this was written on CBSSports.com. They basically go and say the Patriots are at least intrigued by it, but the Bills have not discussed it, even though they go in and say his brother James Cook is a running back there who's in line to be the starter after Devin Singletary left in free agency. But bringing in Dalvin would have James lose some ground as being the starter. But James did hint at he would enjoy the opportunity to be paired and be in the same room as his brother. So I would want to see that too, but it's just the show right now. And maybe the Bills are not that quite interested. Moving on to Richard Sherman. Richard Sherman said on his podcast a couple weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, on June 27th of his podcast called The Volume, he was talking about how the wide receiver basically it told him, okay, it's time to move on. It's time to be done playing this game. He talked about it in the 2021 season, which was Sherman's final year of playing. He was 33 years old, played for the Buccaneers in 2021. He said, the realization came in week 6. I was facing the Philadelphia Eagles, and the rookie at the time was Devontae Smith. Sherman realized his time in the league was up. due to his inability of keeping up with the next generation of wide receivers. He goes on and says, Devontae must have ran this comeback route. And Sherman said on the 27th, on June 27th episode of his podcast, I had him under control. I I I was like, bam, quick jab, easy, had him under control. He must have just stopped. And I tried to stop him. My whole groin just snapped. And I was like, I said, whoa, whoa. I ended up missing 2 months of the season with that injury. He goes on about Devontae Smith saying, you're trying to guard him and chase him around, but you're also saying, please don't throw this ball to him. Please don't throw the ball to him. Sherman said about his mindset facing Smith, my coach is looking at me on the sideline saying, hey, you want to come out? You want to come out? And I'm like, yeah, but they're in a hurry up. So I'm like bailing out at the moment. And I was like, this is probably my last year. I can't keep up with these young dudes. It goes on and says Sherman never officially made a retirement announcement, but hasn't played since 2021 and has apparently hung up his cleats. He has since found multiple ways to stay connected to football, joining Amazon's Thursday Night Football coverage as an analyst and on his podcast, the Richard Sherman podcast. This happens a lot. You get a realization moment of a guy. You're like, I can't keep up with them. Or you get a running back who's always running by people and never getting chased down, and all of a sudden gets chased down by a guy. And there's a, whoa, did he just get chased down by someone? Well, that's probably it. There's like a moment of your turn just to realize what has happened, but you don't realize it at all. He goes, and Sherman says pretty much the same thing. I just felt I couldn't, I didn't have the ability to keep up with him. And that's when he's like, it was time to retire. Now, they also say he didn't actually give a retirement announcement. Calvin Johnson never did either. Actually, this is, go look on, it's called, there's a docu-series the NFL does. It's called A Football Life. They did one for Calvin Johnson, and he explained that he did regret not sharing what the city of Detroit meant to him and how they treated him. And he wished that he would have gave an announcement for the fans, and he just chose not to. He chose to never tell anyone that he was retiring. At the end of the game, like, I believe one of his teammates went and said, "Look, he just had this, like, boyish joy to him." Like, he was just seeing the game for the first time, but even though he wasn't. And how at the end of the game, he went and told his quarterback, Matt Stafford, "Hey, you know this was my last one, right? You know this was my last one." And he walked into head coach's office and said, "Coach, I'm done." But he never gave a reason of to the fans of why he was retiring. He just went on his day. That was it. Moving on to the Panthers are inducting Julius Peppers, and I'm sorry if I butchered this name, Mushin Muhammad, into their Hall of Honor. The Panthers' first additions since 2019. Peppers and Muhammad are the 8th and ninth members of the Panthers Hall of Honor. It goes on saying they were both a catalyst towards this franchise first NFC Championship game in 2003. They will be enshrined at halftime of the team's Week 8 game against the Houston Texans. Peppers also in 2024 will be eligible. Also who will be eligible in 2024 will be Andrew Luck, which, if that means anything to you, of him going in, I get it, but I don't see it. I'm sorry if it's a little dark in here. I didn't put my light up, so just deal with it. Moving on to J.J. Watt. J.J. Watt reveals the longtime Texan stalwart said he considered signing with the Steelers to play with his brothers Derek and TJ before retiring. The longtime Texan is now working for CBS Sports. It says Watt joined the Cardinals after a 10-year run with the Texans back in 2021, and this offseason announced that he was retiring from the NFL and joining CBS Sports. The future Hall of Famer also almost joined the Steelers before hanging up his cleats. He said on Chris Long Greenlight podcast that he considered playing with the Steelers to play alongside his brothers. They were a possibility, Watt said, confirming that to Sports Illustrated that Pittsburgh was a suitor in 2021 free agency. It certainly would have been awesome to play with my brothers, TJ and Derek, but Watt chose to go and sign with Arizona and had a unbelievable 2 years there. They actually showed when Watt had his child, before that he had I think 1.5 sacks, and at that point he had 11.5 for every week that his son was born. It was quite an exhilarating experience. I always felt like that would be awesome to play with your brothers. As as JJ goes on, TJ, the youngest of the three Watt brothers, spent part of his offseason trying to get a long-term deal, in which he got a 4-year deal, $112 million in September, briefly becoming the highest paid player. As for JJ, he signed a 2-year contract where he played with the Cardinals before retiring this offseason, joining CBS Sports as an NFL studio analyst. The 3-time Defensive Player of the Year has openly supported the Steelers since then, praising Pittsburgh's fan base, revealing that he intends to attend some of their games in 2023. It would have been interesting because we've seen 2 siblings already do it. Twins, we've seen the McCourty brothers do it. We've seen, obviously, Derek and TJ Watt, but we've never seen 3. That I would want to see. It won't happen at this moment. Next up, Terrell Owens was talking. He went and brought up his form. He brought up Darren Woodson, and he says Darren Woodson should be in the Hall of Fame over John Lynch. Now, I don't fully agree with that, but I do believe that Darren Woodson should be in the Hall of Fame. It goes and says T.O. knows a thing or two about Hall of Fame controversy. The only player in NFL history to conduct his own induction ceremony of pro football's highest honor. The longtime wide receiver is now shedding light that he believes to be a glaring omission in Canton, arguing that this week the former Cowboy great Darren Woodson should be inducted before John Lynch. The 49-year-old Owens was inducted in 2018, 2 years after he became eligible, and refused to join his class for the traditional induction ceremony, believing bias against his colorful personality had delayed his award. Now, that is not true. 100% not true. Not 100% not true, but I believe the media looked at T.O. Because if you look at T.O.'s numbers, you're like, okay, this guy's in the Hall of Fame. He only wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame if something else happened. And Owens said that the same thing is happening to Darren Woodson. No, Darren Woodson was not like his personality whatsoever. He says, I'm thinking of a guy like Darren Woodson, he said, who is not in the Hall of Fame, but John Lynch is. How in the blank do you quantify that? I want you to go do your research. Go research and see what Darren Woodson has done. Yeah, John Lynch did some great things here and there, Owens continued, but I'm not looking for John when I'm on the field. I wasn't. Just because a guy starts on the defense and he's the number one guy back there doesn't mean he's impactful in what he's doing. I wasn't scared of 47. It goes on about John Lynch's resume, playing 15 years with the Bucs and the Broncos. He was inducted in the Hall of Fame in 21 after retiring 13 years earlier. Now the general manager of the Niners, went to Pro Bowls and all that stuff. Woodson, meanwhile, played 13 seasons, all with the Cowboys, went to 5 Pro Bowls while winning 3 Super Bowls, finished with 967 tackles and 23 interceptions, where John Lynch had 26. He was named the finalist for the first time in the class of 23, but did not get in. And we've talked about this before. There are times where I'm just like, look, there are all these guys. They are all good. But if you're saying, well, we don't want to put 3 Cowboys in at the same time, or 3 Raiders people in at the same time, we don't want to put them in, we'll wait till next year. Well, what happens if that person has passed away? You're just going to keep waiting? It took Don Coryell almost 20 years to get in, and he's not even living anymore. This is a guy who brought out the new age of the offense. The air raid system that is run now was Don Coryell. That's what he did. And yet, it took him so long to get in because the NFL does that. So, to me, if you deserve to be in there, you should be in there. You shouldn't have to wait. That, to me, doesn't make any sense. And final thing, we talk Bill Belichick. Specifically, Belichick could break the NFL's record for most losses by a coach before he marks the most wins by a coach. The Patriots coach is on the cusp of breaking the NFL record for most losses by a coach. He needs 18 more, by the way, to get he needs 18 more to be the leader in wins, by the way. Belichick currently has 152 losses, which puts him in 5th place on the all-time list. And they only count losses in the regular season. The first one is the late great Dan Reeves, who was 190, 165, and 2. Jeff Fisher, the longtime Tennessee Titans and St. Louis Rams head coach, 173, 165, and 1. Tom Landry, the late Tom Landry, 250, 162, and 6. The late Don Shula, 328, 156, and 6. And Bill Belichick, 298, 152, and 0. Belichick just needs 13 Belichick is 13 losses away from tying Fisher and Reeves. And if you count playoff losses, Belichick is also 5th on the all-time list, still only 13 away from the long-time record, including playoffs. Tom Landry, the late great Tom Landry, leads the list, 270, 178, and 6. Then the great Dan Reeves, 201, 174, and 2. Don Shula, 347, 173, and 6. And Fisher, 178, 171, and 1. And Belichick, 329, 165, and 0. It says 3 years ago, it seemed almost inconceivable that he would set the record for most losses. But now it's definitely possible since since Brady left the Patriots. Belichick has gone 25-25 as the head coach. So I'm not saying he'll get the loss record before he gets the win record. All I'm saying is we could have the all-time winningest head coach be also the all-time losingest, all-time most losses as head coach, and it could be the same person, Bill Belichick. And now you could also say at the same time, yes, Belichick was the best coach, but also, was he the worst coach too? You just got to put that in the air and say, well, it is possible, though he also coached for the same team for almost 30 years. But it's just a thought of the all-time winningest head coach could also be the all-time losingest head coach as well. For NFL World, I'm Jacob Hebert. Out.